Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 518. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the award-winning and internationally celebrated author, Nancy Hudgins. Nancy.
Thank you, Barney. I'm delighted to be here, and I want to thank you for all you do to elevate children's books and children's book authors. It's great. Thank you.
I know. Well, I owe it to my kids because I really got back into children's books after having kids. I'm like, sure. These are so fun.
Some of them just get better and better too. It's just, it's wonderful.
Right. Now, so we're here to talk a little bit about the book that you've written called Books Good Enough for You, The Storied Life of Ursula Nordstrom, editor of extraordinary children's books. Now, so why Ursula Nordstrom?
Well, Ursula Nordstrom really changed the face of children's publishing in the mid-20th century. Before that time, books for children were, well, first of all, they were the Dick and Jane books, but beyond those horrible books, they were about good children who did good things, and they taught lessons and morals, and it was kind of adults preaching to kids. And Ursula just wanted to change that, and she tried to find people who were creative either in book writing or in other fields and brought them into children's book writing. And when she found somebody who had that kind of vital creative spark, she really worked with them to get them to write children's books and to really kind of cajole them into writing the best writing that they could.
Right. No, and remind people too exactly what her role was and she basically worked mid-century editor, right. Correct?
Yes, she was the head of the children's book department, which was called, it had different names, the Department of Boys and Girls and this and that. She called it the Top Department, which I think is pretty great. And so she started there in the 30s and became the head of it in 1940. Wow. And was the head of it till 1973. So she thought that books should be fresh and original and honest. And she wrote a piece about it. And she said, anything less is not good enough for a child. And that's how the title comes from that.
Okay. Now, so what's the biggest misconception people have about what editors do then?
Well, I think, I wrote this book for middle grade kids, and I was just talking to middle grade kids at my middle grade school from a long time ago. And, I think that kids think editing is getting your punctuation correct and making sure that you've spelled everything and, making sure this subject and the verb are the same number, that kind of thing. And so I was encouraging these kids to think more broadly about and more imaginatively about editing. And I tried to introduce the concept of developmental editing and sort of looking at the whole story and the big picture, and is the story working, and is the ending satisfactory, those sorts of things. And so I hope kids will take away that there are editors who do what kids think they do, which I just described, but children's book editors and adult book editors are really trying to shape the story. And I was lucky to have two editors on this book, and they really helped me make it so much better. Since you have the cover up, let me tell you about the cover.
Yeah, okay.
The artist, who is Ora Lewis, drew sort of Easter eggs, put in Easter eggs from the stories in the book, from the books that I give the story behind the story of. And so in the upper right-hand corner, you can see Charlotte's Web. And as you go down the stack of books, that's Ursula and her dog probably Pocket on the top. And then you see the purple crayon from Harold and the purple crayon. And then below that is the crown from Where the Wild Things Are that Max wore, and also the tree to the left of that, as you look at it, is also one of the palm trees from the island of the Wild Things. And down below is a bowl of mush, also from Goodnight Moon. Over to the right is the carrot seed, which Ruth Krauss wrote, and there's a spyglass right on the bottom green book from Harriet the Spy. So I thought it was a nice way to implant some stories about the books in the book.
There's like Goodnight Moon, where, like you said, Where the Wild Things Are, and The Night Kitchen. Did she do all of Marie Sendak books as well?
Pretty much. I mean, she discovered him.
Okay.
He was 22 when she discovered him, and she was his mentor. She sent him maybe 30 or 40 books in the next 20 years or so.
Wow.
And to illustrate. And she asked him not to, she didn't want him to have one style. She thought that he had more range than that. And so she asked him to coordinate the style with the style of the book. And he did that. And so as he went along, and they were both self-taught, basically. Neither one went to college. And he read up on German and French and English illustrators, and took a lot of his ideas from them. And so they became really lifelong friends as a result of this collaboration.
How did you kind of structure this? Because you mentioned earlier this book was written it's like a middle grade novel.
Right.
So how did you structure this for middle grade without it sounding like a textbook?
Well, it's a biography. It's basically a biography. I thought of it as a biography. So it starts out, she was born to vaudevillian parents in New York City, and goes through her early life. And then when it gets to her beginning to be the head of the top department, I decided that the way to tell that story, instead of saying, and then she worked in this book and this book and this book, that I would go and research the stories behind the stories of each of those books. And so the titles of the chapters are the titles of the 16 books that I chose to write about. And it was that the research for that was the most fun. I mean, it was just a blast to pull together all these disparate articles on the people that I wrote about. And so, for instance, there are 2 Margaret Weiss Brown chapters. The first 2, The Runaway Bunny and Goodnight Moon. So in explaining to kids how they work together, I first explained who these new people I brought into the book were, who Margaret Weiss Brown was, how she was like Ursula, how she wasn't like Ursula, what she did before she came to write books for children, and what she did in her childhood. And then I did that all the way through for each of these 16 different books. And I thought, well, you're a guy, you're the story behind the stories guy, right? So it's just really fun. And so I wanted to tell him, I wanted them to be fun. And in doing that, I quoted a lot from Ursula's letters, her editorial letters, because she was very, very funny.
Now, was there a classic you desperately wanted to include but couldn't?
I wrote about 5 extra chapters that at one time or another didn't make it to the final book. So yeah, there were some, but I think this is a great representative sample. I mean, I literally could write another book just like this with 16 more people, but.
Right. No, because you quote Ursula extensively in the book. So use through her letters. Did her letters reveal? What did her letters reveal that kind of surprised you about her?
I don't know if the letters revealed it as much as my research revealed it. So in the late 1990s, Leonard Marcus got access from Harper to all of her letters. There were 100,000 of them. and they allowed him to see what he wanted to see. I think he read tens of thousands, and he pulled together about 300 or so, and he put them in a book called Dear Genius: The Letters of Ursula Nordstrom. So that was my guide, and that was a treasure trove even in and of itself. But then, as I did more research, I found more letters that she'd written, and then started researching all the people that she worked with. And she was just a remarkable woman who really got the best out of people. She found really talented people, and she really worked with them to produce the best books they could.
Okay. And so, what was your favorite, I guess, kind of on top of that, what was your favorite Ursula being Ursula moment?
Yeah. Well, I love the story about her going. She's always trying to find new talent, and she wanted to find an artist who drew in pen and ink. And so she would do things like she would look at comic books and she would look at magazines and try to find new people to illustrate for children. And she was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and she looks across the room and there's this pen and ink drawing. She's like, "This is great." She rushes over, and it was well, now I forget his name. It was drawn by a well-known French artist who had previously died, and obviously was not going to be available, even because he was so well known, even if he had been alive, to do picture books for Ursula. But that's what she did. She was always on the lookout for talented people.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. What do you think made Ursula so good at knowing what kids could handle in their books?
Well, I think she was a realist, and she didn't have a happy childhood, pretty much. I think she was kind of more mature than a lot of the kids she went to boarding school with, and she didn't suffer fools lightly, either as a kid or as an adult. But she just wanted to see honest books, and she didn't think that the current level of books for children was. I don't think she would have wanted to read them as a kid. I think both she and Maurice remembered their childhoods very well, and so they remember the emotion of their childhoods, and that's what they wanted to see in books.
I mean, like she stood by Maurice Sendak, especially with like the Night Kitchen.
Right.
There was a controversy behind that. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and still to this day, there's a controversy about it. By this, well, it's interesting that at the time that this book was about to come out, the Maurice had won an international award for writing books for children just months before this book came out. So he had kind of made his mark on the children's book world by that point. And this book, Where the Wild Things Are, came out in 1963. In the Night Kitchen came out in 1970. But in Maurice's idea about this book, it was a boy who's having a dream, and he falls out of bed as he's having the dream, and as he's falling, he falls out of his pajamas. And so by the time he lands in this in the batter that the bakers are cooking down below in his dream, he's naked. And so Sendak drew a couple squiggly lines for a penis on the boy. And I might just add here, before this hoo-ha started, at some point Sendak said, "Well, I thought that if I didn't draw a penis in, boys would feel really bad about that. So it wouldn't be realistic. They'd wonder what the problem was or whatever." So he had a pretty good sense of humor too. But she stood by him. She could see why it made sense. And she didn't think it was any big deal, I think, initially. Initially it wasn't a big deal. It was accepted by people. Librarians are reading it to kids and moms at Story Hour. And then a librarian in Louisiana painted white diapers on Mickey, and it infuriated Ursula, mostly because more infuriated because she was such a supporter of Maurice Sendak. But I think it would have upset her had it been anybody. And she actually called it a mutilation, censorship by mutilation, basically. And so she got the American Library Association involved, and she got 450 writers and illustrators and publishers and book critics to all sign on to a statement that said that this was just censorship and it was unjust and it shouldn't be done. And the ALA actually changed some of their guidelines to make sure that children's books were included in all the protections that they had for books that for the right to read, basically, that children have the right to read too. So in 2025, the book was contested in a Florida school. This is, 55 years after it was originally contested, and so the school took it off the shelf, and they only put it back on the shelf when somebody had painted in blue jean shorts on Mickey. So. Right. This right to read, it just continues. Anyway, it's still a fight.
Yeah. So what would you say then is like the hardest thing about writing a biography for kids?
Well, one of the things that happens in writing a biography for kids, or at least happened to me, was that I'd get very interested in something and I would write pages on it, and I'd do some more research. I think this new thing was really great. And 2 days later, I'd look at it and think, no kid cares about this. I'm the only person who cares about this. So I was able to do a little self-editing, I guess. But I think the first thing you want to do, which is what Ursula believed in, and Margaret Weiss Brown and E.B. White and Maurice Sendak were all involved in this idea that you don't talk down to kids. You just give it to them straight. And when my children were little, I didn't talk down to them. I just told them what was what. And so I think you have to be straightforward and honest with them. And I tried to do that. And actually, I have to say, I didn't have a whole lot of editing I didn't have any editing with the words I chose or I have one sentence that has 50 some words in it, and no one said, "Oh gosh, that's too long for children," So I just tried to write it as I would tell someone the story, who was 10 or 12 or something like that. And so I didn't come with a preconceived notion of how one should do it. I just sat down and did it. So that's about all the insight I have.
And so what do you hope then, kids take away after reading this, besides that editors exist? What else do you want kids to take away from this?
Well, I want them to think that that even though they're young, they still should be reading good literature. And so they ought to look for books that are really well written and thought through, and that have a lot of creative ideas in them. And so I'd like them to keep reading, but I'd also like them to start writing. And everyone writes, but I'd like to see kids do more writing and develop their ideas more on paper.
And what would you say then, if a teacher uses your book in a class, what discussion question would you want them to start asking?
Well, the interesting thing about that is that I think that a teacher could take any chapter about any one of these books and use it to discuss how books are made. And I think that if you took like the chapter on Charlotte's Web,
Mhm.
that was at least the seventh draft
Oh,
that
wow.
that he turned into Ursula
Mhm.
over several years. And
Wow.
so I think uh, that would be something to talk about. That because I remember as a kid, I'd write a paper or a story, and they'd say revise it, or I'd get a note or two from a teacher, and I'd spend 2 seconds doing that. I thought I was done, right? And it's a little more complicated than that.
So then what do you hope then for today's writers and editors? What do you hope that they learn from Ursula's example?
Yeah, I hope they'll continue to platform books that are honest and real.
Mm.
Um, and you can have fantasy books that are honest and real too. I'm not suggesting that they all have to be nonfiction, um, but and just push their writers to write the best that they can write.
Now, Nancy, if people want to learn more about you and the book, where's the best place they could go to?
I have a website called nancyhudgins.com. I wanted to be able to remember it, and so that was easy. Uh, you can send me an email through my website if you'd like. Be happy to hear from anyone. I'm on Blue Sky. I think that's also at nancyhudgins.com, and I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Cool.
So you can.
And so, did you get the writing bug? Are you gonna write another book after this?
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah. I have 2 or 3 books in process at the moment. One's out in submission, and we'll see what happens.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So, Nancy, you're gonna have to come back on then when you get your other book published.
All right. I hope it's soon. I hope it's not
Yeah.
years from now. We'll see.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you for having me, Barney. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you.